Thank you everyone for being here this evening. This is the final Bear Grads webinar of spring 2025, and many thanks to Dr. Randy Larkins, who is the chair and an assistant professor of the Applied Statistics and Research Methods program here at the University of Northern Colorado. Randy is an expert in qualitative and mixed methods research with a background in psychology, education, and human development. He is deeply invested in student success and is a longtime contributor to Bear Grads. We appreciate Randy very much for always being willing to share his knowledge, and I know he's a favorite of students. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Rick West, a graduate from the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences, specifically the School of Teacher Education's Educational Technology program. Rick successfully defended his dissertation on March 25th. Many congratulations to you, Rick. His dissertation is entitled Understanding the Cybersecurity Knowledge and Cybercrime Experiences of Older Adults Using a Learning Game. Last but not least, I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Silvia Correa-Torres, Professor of Visual Impairment in the School of Special Education, which is also a part of the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences here at UNC. Silvia's research interests are centered in the needs for students with visual impairments who are from culturally or linguistically diverse backgrounds, orientation and mobility issues of the visually impaired, and services for individuals with disabilities at the international level. Tonight, our speakers will address the final chapters of the dissertation and discuss how to strategically finish your dissertation, specifically chapters 4 and 5. They will describe the steps that you can take to ensure that your dissertation will be accepted by a graduate school on its first submission.
Dr. Silvia Correa-Torres is one of my favorite co-partners in dissertation research, and she's only here for a half an hour because thankfully she puts family in front of everything else. So what I would like to do is turn it over to Silvia just for a minute because I would like her to give her thoughts on the final dissertation process and any hints or suggestions she might be able to give us all. So I'll prepare the slideshow. Sylvia, go ahead and take it away. Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. Thank you for the invitation, Randy. And I agree with Stephanie. You're a favorite of at least all my students, of all the students that I work with. So thank you for inviting me. I don't know, Randy, I'm not sure what you wanted me to share. And like Randy said, I'm going to be here. I need to leave at 4:30 because I have an engagement with my daughter. But I am a professor in the School of Special Education, and I coordinate our doctoral program. And I'm the research advisor for many doctoral students in the School of Special Education. So I have worked with a lot of students through the entire process of the dissertation and their doctoral program. And of course, I did my dissertation 22 years ago. Which once in a while, I'll go back and look at things, including actually, I think it was this morning, I was looking at something on my dissertation, which is funny. I don't know about chapter 4 and 5. Something that when Randy asked me to be here, the first thing that came to my mind, I feel like, every step of this process, it's, a new challenge, something new that you haven't done, the doctoral students haven't done. So it's like, okay, the proposal is going to be the most challenging thing so far. Once you get that done, then it's data collection. And then after that, I do believe chapter 4 and 5 are among the most challenging things that you will do as part of your doctorate, especially if you have a lot of data. How do you put all that data together and how you make sense of it? I think is the biggest challenge. But of course, once you get to that step, you are ready to do that. No one knows your data better than I do, and the things that, what you do, your study better than you do. So I always tell that to my students, remind them of that for the defense. But something that I see often where students have a lot of trouble in chapter 4 and 5 is especially most of the dissertations that I supervise or that I support my students with are qualitative, and I see a lot when the students are writing the findings, how they interject themselves on the findings chapter, which is not the place where you want to have any discussion at all, right? Chapter 4 is to report your findings. So everything on that chapter should be strictly coming from your data, your themes, or however, qualitative, quantitative. So everything should be from the findings. But I see a lot like students kind of want to start discussing the theme on chapter 4. No, you leave that for chapter 5. Randy, do you agree with that?
So far everything you've said, I'm covering, and I agree entirely. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any other words of advice for a doctoral student, just in general, not even the chapter 4 and 5? I mean, Dr. Correa-Torres really has helped a lot of students get through their doctorate. So that's why I really wanted her here.
Thank you, Randy. Well, I think like I'm trying to think of someone that I'm working with right now for a proposal. She's hoping to propose at the end of next month. We have a date, and the meetings that I have with her, and I don't know, like, but one thing that, like, as you're moving through your program, you will see that it gets very intense, the meetings with your advisors. At least that's for me with my students. Like, I'm meeting with the student almost every week because I want to provide her the support that she needs for proposal. And then after the student proposes, they go to collect data, and then after that I am like here if they need me. But it gets intense again when they have written the chapter 4 and 5, because I'm providing support, and that's when the back and forth about like, no, you need to get out yourself out of chapter 4, or you need more here, more here. But something that I recommend to students, and Randy, I'm sure that you talk about this on prior parts of this series, is that when you're choosing your topic for your dissertation, it has to be a topic that you're passionate about and that you're not going to get tired of. I am one of my doctoral students started the program thinking that she was going to do her dissertation, like everything related to certain topic. She got to her comprehensive exam and she got like, that was not the topic anymore. She was like, I don't think I can do that. And after having gone through the entire program, researching that topic, and then she got to that point, and she was like, I think I want to switch. And I'm like, I will support you with that. It's going to take some work because you knew the literature really well on that other topic that you have been working on throughout your program. And now you're switching to a brand new topic. So it's going to take you a little bit longer to put together your proposal and to become an expert on that topic. But I encourage her to do that, because the worst thing that could happen is that you're working on your dissertation and you get to data collection and you're just sick of the topic. And then that's not going to be any motivation for you to finish the dissertation. So it happened to me when I was doing my doctorate. I did exactly what my student did, and I was able to do it. It took a little bit longer. Like I said, after like knowing the literature on a topic that you thought that you wanted to research, and then exploring something totally new. But for me, it was worth it. I think for my student, it's going to be worth it, because you need to have some kind of motivation. And if you're not motivated to research a topic, I mean, it's going to take you longer to complete a dissertation, most likely. So I don't know. Maybe
I
I'll,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to go ahead and start presenting the slides. And Sylvia, if you or Rick, either one, have anything to interject, please feel free. Just a little joke to start off with. This is what somebody said were the steps to completing your dissertation: drudgery, procrastination, panic, despair, drudgery, and printing. I think there's a little bit more to it than that, but there are times when you might feel like all you're doing is just going along, not really being able to do much. And you may procrastinate. I know I've done that before. I know panic is there and despair is there. But at the same time, there is a feeling that you're accomplishing something. And by the time you get finished with it, you are going to be so happy with yourself. I absolutely promise you that. So, and everybody else will be really proud of you too. So I've done 2 sessions so far, how to prepare for the dissertation. So before you even start, there are things you should do. Then I talked about the proposal. And by the way, Dr. Correa-Torres is part of the IRB. She's one of the co-chairs. And so she's a good person to know for that. And then finally, today is the final chapters. So here's what we're going to cover. Chapter 4, the alternative to Chapter 4, the Chapter 5, the final defense, and getting your dissertation to the graduate school on time. And I'm an expert in that because I got my dissertation to the graduate school exactly 30 minutes before they closed down and the deadline was due. So, um, I want to remind you all that this is not about any particular department. There may be other requirements that the department has, and so I can't claim to be an expert in that. I unfortunately, because of technical difficulties, I was 10 minutes late, and 80 minutes is not enough time to cover every detail. So be sure to check with your advisor. I mean, the very first thing you do is make sure that your research advisor is with you. They are part of your process and they need to be an intimate part of that process.
And I just want to say that especially the last 2 months finishing up my dissertation, I felt like I was just I don't know. I felt like I was a pain to my advisor, but he assured me, no, this is all part of the process. So
Yes, that's true. Yeah, so be nice and be respectful of them, but don't worry about bugging them because that's why they're here. So, first things first, I wanted to remind you that once you finished your proposal and it was accepted, then you became a doctoral candidate. The minute you finish your final defense and it's accepted, you become a PhD. And I always wondered, well, what if my revisions weren't good enough? What happens if something happens after that? But I was assured that I was a PhD the minute I finished my defense. So Dr. Rick West may not be used to it yet, but he is a doctor.
uh,
So I also have talked about the graduate school website, but if you want to finish and you want to finish on time and do it right, you absolutely have to get really familiar with the graduate school website. Just quickly, there are resources for you, and those resources are important, especially the doctoral dissertation and doctor's scholarly project. You just really need to look at it and follow what they said. It has so many resources in that graduate school site that you really need to pay attention to. And there are some forms that you really need to bring to the final defense. So make sure and talk about that with your advisor. There are also deadlines. So make sure and look at the project and dissertation checklist because you do not want to miss any of those deadlines or you may be forced to wait another semester to graduate. Be sure that your research advisor is on the same page as you as to timelines, because generally when you're talking about the final defense, you actually work backwards. You have to have at least 2 weeks before your final defense that you schedule the final defense. And then you have to have a certain amount of time before you schedule the final defense to have your advisor go over your final manuscript. And you need to be able to talk to your committee about it as well. So you're actually planning at least a month or two in advance of when you finally present your final thing. Uh, this is some more on the checklist that's really important. Carol Stewart is the person who gives the final okay for your dissertation, and she is extremely important, and she's a very nice person, but also extremely busy. So be sure to talk to her if you have any questions about formatting, especially. There are deadlines you should know. The last day for scheduling the defense of your dissertation, the last day is June 27th and October 31st if it's fall. The last day for filing your dissertation. So you've done your dissertation, but now you need to actually give it to the graduate school, is July 3rd for summer and November 7th for fall. So be sure and look at those deadlines, especially for when you're going for your final defense. So let's talk about chapter 4. And by the way, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to interrupt me or go to the chat, and Stephanie will notify me of any questions you may have. I don't mind answering them immediately. Chapter 4 is the results and the findings. And that is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to lay out the evidence to answer your research questions. Chapter 4 is all about your research questions. You have those and you answer them, and that's it. And exactly as Dr. Correa-Torres said, it's not your opinion in this thing. You're just laying out the evidence for everyone. So it should be easy for people to understand and clearly explained. And I have seen a lot of complex topics that have been explained really well by students as long as they know what they're doing. And you can pretty clearly tell the people who are prepared and ready to go and the people who are trying to fake it, and it just doesn't work to fake it. So tell a story that's so convincing that everybody understands. The elements of chapter 4 are pretty simple. You repeat your research questions at the very beginning of the chapter because that's what guides the rest of the chapter. Then you do some descriptive statistics. You talk about your participants if you have them, and you talk about how you found them, and you describe them in some way, usually by their demographics. And then you present the findings. And that's whether it's quantitative, qualitative, or both. You just present the findings and then you give a summary. So when you're giving your results, you should always make sure that you do the questions in order. Don't mix anything around. Be sure and be really clear as to what question you're addressing and how you're addressing it. Tables and graphs. I have seen many chapter 4s where students try to describe participants using words in paragraphs, and it becomes really confusing, especially if you have a lot of participants. So use a table and make it really simple for people to understand. Be sure that you explain the process when you found your results so that people can follow how you did what you did. And you have already described it in chapter 3, but I just want you to summarize what you did. And if there's anything that has changed, be sure that they understand your process. And you do not put your interpretation in the chapter. Just like Dr. Correa said, you don't talk about how you feel about this. You just put your findings down and then summarize what you found.
And there is a strong temptation to do that, by the way. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, when I was writing my chapter 4, I was so enthusiastic about the findings that I wanted to comment on them right then and there. But yeah, had to.
Yep. Yep. So there are kinds of different patterns for qualitative, quantitative, and mixed. So I just like to focus on each part. So for qualitative studies, usually qualitative students do a thematic analysis, and you have a lot of themes. And if you don't graphically organize them, sometimes I can go for pages and pages and not really know where you're at and where you're going to finish. And it's just really hard for me to read. So I really suggest that you have some sort of chart or graph that shows about your themes and their relationship to each other so that I can follow along when I'm reading the manuscript. It has always been my advice that you should not have more than 5 or 6 major themes. I really think that almost anything can be condensed into that number of themes, and you may have some sub themes in each one of these, but try not to make it too complex. Use detailed quotes from your participants to label your themes. The major thing I've seen in qualitative dissertations is that somebody from the committee says, well, how did you get these themes? Did you just get them out of your head? And the easiest way to talk to them about that is to say, no, here's what my participant actually said, and I took the label from what they said. They can't really argue with you if you do it take it from your participants' own words. Another thing that some qualitative people have tried to do is to use number to label your participants. And that is a no-no in qualitative research. You're not talking about participant number 1. You're talking about Nancy or Richard or something like that. You're talking about a real life person and you're telling a human story about that person. So be sure and personalize it. You should use pseudonyms, but you should make them personal. For quantitative studies, there are a lot of complex ideas and analyses that you'll be doing, and you need to make sure that your tables and graphs cover that simply so that people understand and that you explain those tables and graphs really well. Point out details in the analysis because some analyses are really complex and it may be hard to actually pinpoint exactly which one is important. So you need to explain that to people. Just pretend that you're the expert and no one else knows as much as you do about these findings because it's the truth. You are the expert. So explain those findings in a way that people can understand, even if they're outside your field. And chances are at least one person in your committee is going to be outside of your field. And so make sure that they understand as well. Emphasize those significant findings and summarize the findings, but always keep your research question paramount throughout the entire chapter. Make sure that people know where you are in terms of your research questions and what you're answering. Mixed method studies can be really complex in terms of the process. So I really, really encourage you to use graphics uh, to describe it. We have 2 graphics that I teach about. One is called the concept map, where you talk about your philosophical foundation, You talk about the purpose of your study, the methods in a simplistic way, and the way you're going to prove what we call inference quality, which is validity and reliability. And you should use the terms that are associated with mixed methods so that people understand that you understand what mixed methods is about. Also, make sure that your findings are tied to your research questions and the process. So we have both quantitative and qualitative in mixed methods, and you need to make sure that when you're doing your quantitative findings, they know those are your quantitative findings and they know why you put those first. And qualitative, the same way. You make sure they understand that that's what you're doing. You talk about the themes or whatever it is that you do in your qualitative research, and you just make sure that they follow the entire process and you're answering those questions in a logical way. Make it simple. I mean, I really encourage that even if your topic is super complex, make it simple. Summarize your findings in terms of your research questions. I just can't repeat that over too much because that's where people really fall down in terms of chapter 4, is that they really don't answer the research questions the way they should. And finally, a conclusion. You just talk about what the results said, what was important in the chapter, and then don't talk about yourself or your interpretation of it. You just wait until chapter 5 to finish. And like Rick said, it's real easy to do it, but don't. The difficulties in chapter 4 can be two ways. One is too little data. That happened to me. I thought that I was going to have a lot of people. I had 6 focus groups in my doctoral dissertation, and I thought it would be easy to get them. I had over 1,200 people in about 8 sessions of a class that I went and talked to try to find participants, and I ended up not getting enough participants. And so I had to go back to the IRB and ask them if I could increase my rewards. I gave gift certificates to people, and so I increased the amount of the gift certificates, and I had to go back to the IRB. So before you change anything that you said you would do, you have to talk to your advisor first and make sure they give you the okay. And you may have to go back to the IRB, and your advisor should be able to tell you whether or not you need to modify that IRB application that you had after the proposal. So that's what you do with too little data. However, this whole entire year, the more people I have talked to have had too much data and they just don't know how to organize it all. And I honestly did have one student who had 1,000 or more pages of data, and he had no idea how to organize it. And so my best advice to you is talk to your advisor, develop a flow chart that tells you the different, you organize your information in some way so that it comes out to about 6 topics or so that you can organize it in such a way that you can put the data in there. Somehow you have to have some sort of organizational plan that limits the way you represent your data. Otherwise, you'll just be floundering. And so I recommend that you use flowcharts to present themes, and then you put your data underneath those themes, and that should take care of. And Rick, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, no.
Okay. There is an alternative, and you need to check with the graduate school to make sure that that they're okay with what you do. But I personally, in my dissertation, instead of chapter 4, I wrote 2 articles. So they were actually different chapters. I had chapter 4 and chapter 5, and they were different articles. And that was okay with the graduate school at the time. You may want to present your chapter 4 in a totally different way that's really not normal. And so you need to talk to the graduate school before you go ahead with it. Make sure that you do that. But there are alternatives. So this is what the advice the graduate school has about that. And so be sure that you follow that and don't go through your whole entire chapter 4 and write it the way you think might be the best and then find out that it's not the right way to do it. Chapter 5 is the final chapter. And this may sound really weird. There's a conclusion, and the conclusion has 3 parts. First, you interpret the findings, but it's not like you're interpreting the findings in chapter 4. Chapter 4 is just presenting the findings, the analysis that you had. In chapter 5, you're presenting that analysis, but you're also going back to the literature and saying, this agrees with previous literature, or this is different from previous literature. And as you discuss it, and that is where you can use your opinions and your ideas. Another part is limitations of the study, and then finally future research. I've had some people call limitations of the study lessons learned, and I really like that. So if your advisor's okay with it, that might be something you do. This is my personal advice that people might find crazy. What I say is, at this point, you are the expert. You have read the literature for at least a year, if not much longer than that. Usually you do read it a lot longer than that. You know the literature. And so my advice to you is to find a place, preferably outside your home, that you do not have to do any housework or anything else. You have total uninterrupted time. You rid yourself of all distractions, and you forget about citing literature, and you just write chapter 5 down. Chapter 5 is about what is the most important things that you have found in your dissertation over the year or more that you've done this dissertation. And so I want you to tell us a compelling story that talks about what you found, why it's important, and why society needs to care about it. And so don't put in all the details. Put in what's really important that really is the meat of your whole entire dissertation. And I myself actually went and rented a cabin to get this done. And after you're finished, then you go back and put in your citations that you need to put in. But my advice is, if you keep interrupting yourself with citations, you're going to be distracted and disjointed in chapter 5. And chapter 5 is probably the most important chapter that you'll write, even though it's shorter than most of the other chapters. The shortest chapters are chapter 1 and chapter 5. Chapters 2, 3, and 4 can be much longer. But chapter 5 is really important. So you want to say what you need to say and be done. And here's a repetition of what I said. Make sure that you compare and contrast previous work with your work and help us understand why your research was important. The so what factor is so what does it matter that you did your entire research? Why does it matter to me or to society? And that is probably the most important part of chapter 5 is so what? In limitations of the study, you're primarily focused on your methods. What is it that you did that you wish you could have done differently, maybe? What did you learn? Because things don't always happen in real life the way you thought they should happen. What limited your ability to conduct the perfect study? So, talk about that. There is one problem, especially in qualitative case study, that I have talked to many students about. You do a quantitative study because you want to talk about a large sample and you want to talk about the characteristics of that large sample. You do a qualitative study because you want to talk about a small sample in depth. And so people during limitations apologize for a small sample. They say, well, if I had a bigger sample, maybe I could have more uh, a better study. And the truth is, you would not have a better study because a small sample is used to go in depth. And in fact, I'm going to have Rick talk about this, but I asked him about that during his dissertation, and he said actually a size of 1 might have been the best for him. And how many did you actually use in your qualitative study, Rick?
I had 5. It's a
Yeah,
case study. Yeah.
yeah,
It was interesting. One of my limitations, it was kind of, it's, you know, two, I don't know, opposing views, I suppose. But um, when I felt like with my 5 in my case study, that they were very similar in all of my participants had been victim of some type of online fraud, and I didn't have any participants that were, victims of, like major, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that, and yet they, even with a small amount of loss, they still felt it really impacted them emotionally, and that was one of the big findings from it. But I did find that as I was writing it, there's so much I probably could have gone more in depth on individual experiences if I had fewer participants or even one participant. And so in some ways I'd like to expand it, but in other ways I'd like to go more in depth to get that personal experience.
sure. So again, quantitative studies, the researchers don't apologize for not going in depth more. So qualitative researchers should not apologize for going in depth and not having a broader group. You may say, well, it would be nice to have different demographics, a larger differential in demographics, but that's not an apology or a limitation. You chose that. And there are other things you can do. So for future research, you talk about that. What is it that you did not do in your study, but might have been a good idea? So how, and also one of the biggest things I tell my students is that research is not ever a complete study. Research is always a part of a bigger study. And so you cut your dissertation into a manageable size, and then uh, you may talk about, well, what's the next step? In fact, your committee may ask you that. What's the next step? And so you can talk about that in terms of future research, but don't ever try to do everything in one study, even if it's a dissertation. If you were going to change something, what would you do? Like Rick said, he may have talked about quantitative. At one time, he was thinking about making it a quantitative study. Well, what would it be like if it had been a quantitative study? Or a different kind of qualitative study. So just use your imagination in terms of future research. And then you have the summary. And the summary is the last part of a long phase of writing, and you are so glad to get to the end. And sometimes you run out of words to say, but remember, the summary does not need to be very long at all. It just hits the very, very most important highlights that you want people to leave with. And it should have something of importance, and it should be meaningful. To me, research is all about change. And what does your research do to change the world to make it a better place? And that's what I think you should end with. So, after you finish writing everything, you go to the defense. And there is something I found while I was looking at defenses, and I think these are really good suggestions. I'm not going to read them all, but hopefully you can either look for it or revisit this. But start your preparations early is very important, and attending presentations by other candidates is very helpful. All the suggestions in there is good. Be sure that your advisor has enough time to read your material. If anybody is going to defend anything in your final defense, it's going to be your advisor. And if they're not prepared, then you're not going to be very successful. So be sure that your advisor is totally on your side and approves of everything before you get together in front of the committee. Your advisor is your best friend. That's all I can say. Talk to your advisor, then talk to your committee. And sometimes it's really helpful to do all of that, to talk to all of your committee members before your defense actually happens. And talk to them about presenting your findings, especially if it's complex and you need to know exactly how you should do it. You have different committee members because they have different ideas, and sometimes you may find a committee member that has a really good suggestion that your advisor didn't even think of. So just talk to them all. Your committee should be on your side. And by the time you get to your final defense, if you've done all this, then there should be no surprises at your defense. Your advisor is behind you. Your advisor says you're ready to go. Your committee has already talked to you about certain things that you're going to present and how you should present them. So by the time you get there, there should be no surprises and you should not fail. I've heard that a few people have failed, but it's a very, very small number, and it's probably because they really didn't follow the suggestions I'm giving you right now.
And I just want to, if I can, take the time now to talk about the difference between the dissertation defense and the proposal defense, because I have a very broad set of interests in that. So it's really hard as I was working on my proposal to narrow down, exactly what it is that I wanted to study, and it was kind of too much. And anyway, I felt like I had a disastrous proposal defense. In fact, when the committee went to meet in a separate room while I was waiting. I'm like, well, it was a good try I gave it, and thought that that was it. But what they did was they came back with some excellent advice, and I heeded every word of that advice. And I acknowledged both in my dissertation and in my presentation that I gave, talking about it during my defense, about how important that feedback that they gave me during my proposal defense. And so it did go smoothly because, I felt like, I had gotten the advice that I needed to really streamline and make an impactful dissertation.
Yes. And I appreciate that. I mean, even though the proposal was kind of rocky, uh, you do get disappointed. You can't help but get disappointed if things don't go the way you really thought they should go. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't listen and pay attention to it. And like I say, by the time you get to the final defense, Rick was very well prepared and had an excellent final defense. So, uh, when you're preparing for your defense, I would suggest that you have your manuscript as close to the grad school formats as possible, because it's really difficult to, by the time you get done with your defense, you just want to be done. And to go back and reformat everything, even though the proposal doesn't have to be formatted in a certain way, I recommend that you just try to follow the grad school formats the entire way so that you really don't have much work to do after your final defense. Making sure again that you check the deadlines, because if you defend after a certain day, they will not record your defense as being in that semester. It'll be the next semester, which may or may not be good for you. Make sure to schedule the date with the committee, and that the committee has a really good idea, plenty of advance, as to when your defense is going to happen. And you have to decide whether you're going to do it online or in person or have both. And nowadays it's very often both. Um, and then make sure and send the forms to the graduate school. If you do not send it, they have to advertise your defense at least 2 weeks in advance. So if you send it a week in advance, they will tell you no. So be sure that you send it on time. There are forms. Uh, when you're preparing for your defense, you should prepare a summary of your dissertation. I've seen summaries that have gone as long as an hour or even over an hour, and honestly, I think that's too long. I think you should have about 20 to 30 minutes that summarizes your dissertation. And in your final defense, you've already gone over your proposal, so you just remind people quickly of what chapters 1, 2, and 3 were about, and then you really focus on your findings and your interpretation of the findings. So that's what your summary is really mostly about. Don't go over everything because they have read your paper. So hit the highlights. Make sure that you keep them interested. Remember that your presentation for the final defense is actually what you're going to use oftentimes to get a job. It may be a presentation that you show people for quite a while afterwards. Make sure that you practice so that you're not reading from your notes, but you're actually using the slides and making it entertaining. And my best advice is make absolutely sure that you use the equipment you're going to use. Because if you use somebody else's equipment and then you go to your defense using different equipment, chances are really good that equipment is not going to work the same way and you're going to be in trouble. Make sure that you're comfortable, but wear clothes that a PhD should be expected to wear. And I know that that can be a wide range, but just try to be professional and respectful. There is a question if you're doing in-person defenses as to whether or not you should bring snacks. I have seen anything from water and a few chips to a complete gourmet meal. I mean, I could not believe some of the things people bring. And my advisor told me something I've always valued. She said, if somebody caters a meal while you're defending, it's really hard for the faculties to say no, and it feels like bribing. So don't do it. Just bring some snacks. It's 2 hours. People definitely need water, and you need water. So make sure and have a water or some other, well, I say water, and then you can have something else like coffee or juice or something, but make sure you have water available. Start your defense by thanking your committee, whether or not you even know it. They have spent a lot of time on you. And except for your advisor, no one else on your committee is paid for doing this. And they have done it out of the goodness of their heart for you. So make sure that you thank them. Even if all they did was read your final paper, that still took hours to be able to read your final paper and make comments. So uh, thank them. And then remember that you're the expert in the room regarding your topic. The defense is funny. You think that you're actually presenting your paper. What you're really doing is presenting yourself. They want to know if you are a candidate who actually acts and behaves like a doctoral student should act and behave, and not that you're bumbling around or not sure of yourself, things like that. They want to show that you're a professional. And so you need to be really confident in what you say and how you act. If they ask you questions, respond to them, and you have time. You can think about things for a few seconds before you answer. So don't be really quick to answer questions, but think about them first. And you can ask your advisor to help you by asking a kind of easy softball question first. Uh, but just keep on going with confidence. And if you don't know an answer, that's perfectly acceptable. Nobody knows all the answers. And so I would just say, I'm not sure about that. Here's my best guess. And then you could talk about it. But don't act like you're just really embarrassed about the fact that you don't know. It happens. The committee will excuse you so they can deliberate. I have been in over 60 of those committees. And I can tell you that we talk about all kinds of things. We do talk about whether or not you pass your defense, and we talk about why. And if there's any hesitations or revisions that need to be made, we talk about those as well. But we can also talk about, the classes that you've taken with us and what a great person you are. And we can talk about somebody's wedding, even. I mean, the committee can talk about all kinds of things. So please don't worry about it, but just stay close and they'll call you when it's time to call you. So be sure to be close by, but don't worry about how long it takes. It may be really short, it may be really long, and neither one determines whether you pass or fail. And by the time you get to this point, you should really pass. There are revisions almost always after a defense. And so you will need to make those before you go to take your manuscript to the graduate school. be sure that you have good notes on what those revisions are. Sometimes your committee will want to see those revisions, sometimes they won't. So you'll need to ask that as well. After the defense, there are 3 choices for the committee. You either pass, you pass with conditions, meaning that you really need to revise some things, or you fail. If you fail or you pass with conditions and you don't meet those conditions, then your program is terminated. So my advice to you is be sure to pass the very first time and don't gamble with it. Make sure that your advisor and your committee feel like you're ready to pass before you actually go for that final defense. And then finally, you have to submit your paperwork. So at the defense, your advisor has to have the results of the dissertation defense and doctoral signature page. Those get sent to your advisor and your committee 2 weeks before your defense. You have to be sure to turn in your completely revised dissertation, your verification of research subject compliance form, your IRB approval, and if you don't need one, you need verification from IRB that you don't, and then dissertation processing form. Those are all found in the graduate school. And there's the link to that. Again, what I said before, graduate school requires formatting, and it's not APA, it's not any of the other styles exclusively. They have their own things that they want you to do. The thing that caught me was subheadings can only be a certain amount of the page. I don't remember exactly how many inches it is, but it's not very long. So a heading you think fits fine on one line may actually turn into 3 lines. Use the guidelines and just make it a religious habit to just follow those guidelines. And in the end, what I suggest is if you've made it as close as you can to the formatting, hire an expert. It may cost you a little bit, but it's worth it to make sure that the paper is accepted the very first time. If it's not accepted the first time, you have one more chance. And if it's not accepted the second time, then you have to wait a semester before you turn it in again. So get close to the final product. Hire an expert if you can, and you'll be glad you did. And now Rick, and I realize I didn't give you much time. I apologize, but yeah, about 5 to 10 minutes at least, and I would like to just have you talk about your preparation.
Well, it took me a while. Working full time in a high pressure job and working on dissertation isn't optimal for speed, but in the end, I had support from my family and friends and from some really awesome advisors and teachers, including Dr. Larkins, especially Dr. Larkins. And as far as my process goes, like I had mentioned about how I really needed to get a better focus on my dissertation that came through at my proposal defense, and that really helped. That gave me kind of the clarity that I needed to make an impactful study, and really the data collection part. I did a case study, as I mentioned, and interviewed 5 different participants, and it was really actually a wonderful experience. And as I put together my chapters 4 and chapter 5, I just reflected back and read back the transcripts from the interviews and that, and just I really relived those interviews and tried to my best to bring out their personalities, their distinct personalities in the narratives that I put together. And so that was really fun. The difficult part was really, formatting it correctly, and I mentioned that earlier, like in chapter 4, I really wanted to add my commentary and my suggestions and things I would have done differently, but I wound up having to push those to chapter 5. So, but still, the narratives that I put together in chapter 4 were really, really impactful, and letting my participants speak, for themselves and bringing out their experiences, and that was for me, it was moving. So when I scheduled I basically looked at my calendar and had basically 2 months to get my dissertation completed and submitted to my committee in time so that I could meet the deadlines and that, and that was pretty it was a stressful time. And I didn't have time for a lot of other things, but in the end, I'm just really proud of the work that I've done, honored by the participants and my committee members for trusting me to portray their stories, and having the faith in me from the my committee members, having the faith in me that I would be able to do this. And I don't know exactly what more to say, but there is one little story that I wanted to talk about. I have had pretty strong imposter syndrome, which Dr. Larkins can attest to. And I had an experience that happened to me in January this year that made me feel like I really did belong in this company of doctors, which I'm still getting used to. And that is that my daughter, she's studying in England, and she's for her undergraduate, she's doing a dissertation like final research project for her degree program, and she had this passion for studying hedgehogs. She wants to be a conservation biologist, and that's what she's working toward. And she had this she was really excited about doing this study on the hedgehog population of a park near her house. And she went through the first 3 chapters of a dissertation and put together this wonderful proposal. And it included putting these little tunnels for the hedgehogs to track basically their footprints in that, and to be able to count how many hedgehogs were in the area. Well, what happened was many of the tunnels were destroyed primarily by dogs, and some by people, and that. And she wound up getting almost no actual data on hedgehogs. And so she had talked to her advisor, and he's like, well, you can do, some other thing, use some program and public data and that. But she was kind of devastated. She really wanted to finish this study and didn't know what to do. And I told her, what I've learned is that it's really important to report the findings you have. That even if those findings are not what you had anticipated. And in her case, the findings weren't on the population of hedgehogs in the park, but it turned into the precautions that maybe need to be taken for future researchers to ensure that the same thing doesn't happen to others. I said it's that data that she has, and that those findings can really help other people in the future. And so regardless of the findings that you have, if they're not exactly what you expected, they can still be valuable. And that I would encourage all of you to think of that. And it's what really made me feel like maybe I did learn something over the last few years. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for now.
Rick, I agree so much with it. And the one nice thing about a dissertation is that you absolutely do not have to show significance. You've worked really hard and you've tried and you've done the methods, which is what's really important. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But you can still report it in your dissertation and like you say, suggest ways for it to be improved in the future, and you're done. So
Yes.
I think that's a wonderful thing. So remember, the process is what's important, not necessarily significant findings. And remember that your presentation, the way you present yourself, is really important. Are you confident? Do you show that you actually were the one who went through this whole entire process and you learned from it? And if you can do that, then I think you'll pass. So, thank you so much, Rick. Are there any questions from anybody in the audience? I honestly have never seen anybody fail, but I have seen somebody come really close. In terms of the proposal, I've seen uh, a few. It's really a minority, but I have seen a few fail the proposal. And so they had to go back and rework it. And Rick's exactly right about the process is if it doesn't go the way you thought it does or should, then you go back to your advisor and you say, well, how do we rework this? And you work together with the advisor so it happens. That happened to me once as an advisor where I was absolutely 100% convinced that this was going to go without any problem at all. And so my student and I went in front of the committee and we got bombarded, and I was just shell shocked afterwards. You may have to just rework it. And if that's the case, then you go to the committee members who said they didn't like it and figure out what went wrong so that it doesn't happen again. But in terms of the final defense, any committee I've been on, my guarantee to that person is if I'm on your committee, I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that you succeed. And their advisors should do the same thing. My belief is that no student should go in front of a final defense unprepared and not ready to pass. Even though it's scary and it seems like a real scary thing. Honestly, my feeling is if your advisor's a good advisor and your committee members are good committee members, then your comprehensive exam should really be your last time that you're not sure if you're going to pass or fail. You should be prepared for your proposal and you should be prepared for your final defense, and there should be no problems. So your final defense should actually be a celebration.
Yeah, so I created a game, a learning game, and it was fun theme called Beware of Pirates. So the pirates sailing the internet, looking to steal your treasure. And it was a game primarily aimed at older adults, but really a game that could be played by anyone. And I'm interested in making that, taking that and adding more depth and features to it, and possibly even making it a commercial product. But even more, I'm going to be looking for academic positions where I can both uh, do research and instruct and or advise, because I've been so, I don't know, I'm just so thankful for the professors and their just incredible way of advising and encouraging the students, and Dr. Larkins really exemplifies everything that I would want to be in a college professor and researcher, and so I'm really hoping to continue on that path.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's better to include them earlier, but if you have an analysis and you just want to confirm the RCL is a perfect place to go. And the other thing is, like I said, you need to be really confident when you go in front of the committee so that they don't think somebody else did it or that you don't understand what you did yourself. And so I remember a committee this semester where a student had started 2 years ago, not really knowing much about statistics at all. And she went to the RCL and they helped her through the whole process. She had to do it, but they helped her through the whole process. And by the time she got to the committee, the defense, she could explain exactly why she did what she did and what the assumptions were and everything else. I mean, she acted like she was a statistics major. It was unbelievable. The nice thing about the RCL is that we have a combination of people who are concentrated in research methods and people who have concentrated in statistics. So if either side has a problem, they can go to the other side, and usually they work in groups so they can work together on it. The other thing is that the applied statistics side doesn't have much experience in research, and so they come to the research consulting lab as consultants to learn about how to consult with students. And I am just finishing teaching a consulting class, so we talk about how to talk to students. So my advice is go there and learn how to talk like a pro.
As far as the data, and your discussion, and defending how you put uh, your study together, and what the findings really say, and that, I know for me, I just was so intimate with the data that I had that it was very easy to talk about it.
Yes. Yes. And by the time you get to the defense, that's exactly how it should be. So, yeah, I realize it's time. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And Rick, thank you again. Uh, Thank you, Silvia. Hopefully she's having a good time with her daughter right now, but I appreciate the fact that she was able to come. And I'd also like to thank the graduate school and Stephanie for everything that you've done to help me present this to students.